time and a lot of fun, hasn't it?
It's been really fun. We get to be in a great business of communication and broadcasting and media and all that stuff. And during these times right now, people are asking, well, what's changed for you in your company, in your business? What has changed for you?
Everything.
Yeah.
What hasn't changed? It's been a year of incredible adjustment. I think for me, the biggest thing is just, transitioning my business from broadcast primarily
Yeah.
to now working with business people and lay people, just helping them get comfortable with doing what we're doing now, which is meeting like this online. It's a complete transition of my business, but it's so much fun because now everybody has to learn how to use the camera to communicate.
Yeah, Tony and I met as Tony was one of my broadcasting coaches, and I would meet with Tony to talk about polishing up things, learning different things, changing things. I hate the word pivoting, but I'll say pivoting in some areas of expertise. And so I have a great deal of respect for people who help people get better in their ability to present and be on camera and those kinds of things. Is that what you went to school for? What did you think you would be doing at this point in your life?
Well, honestly, I thought I was going to be Walter Cronkite. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a newscaster because
Hmm.
I loved the presence of and the respect you had for those legendary newscasters back
Yeah.
in the 70s, 60s, and 70s growing up when I was growing up. And then I transitioned into sports because I always wanted to cover the Dallas Cowboys, were my team growing up as a kid. I hope I didn't offend anybody. I'm sorry if I did. But I was a big Cowboys fan since I was 10 years old, growing up in Santa Fe, New
Hmm.
Mexico. And I told my family, I want to go to Dallas and cover the Cowboys. And
Right.
in those days, it was like, come on, you're kidding. You're never going to get to do that. And I made it my goal and my dream. And I, of course, have covered the team for many years when I was a broadcaster, and then had the opportunity not only to cover the Cowboys, but then to work with them and to coach some of their players and even work with Tom Landry, believe it or not, for a while back after he retired, and do a documentary on his life and career. So you talk about living your dream. I mean, I'll tell you, every day I just cannot believe the stuff that I've gotten to do because of meeting people like you, just because of being in this business.
Hmm.
It's like being in the candy store of life. That's what I call it.
I would have to agree. I mean, people would say when they would ask me what I would do, so you're play-by-play announcer, you're color analyst, like that's got to be so much fun. It has to be so easy. I mean, you played sports and now you get to talk about sports. It must be so easy. No, it's not easy. So sometimes, I mean, I'm like, okay, I'm flattered that you think I make it look easy, but let me tell you, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of preparation. And then, as I mentioned, there's a lot of the technical things that you need to do to be good on camera. Let's talk a little bit about those, Tony, because I know you're spending your time now helping people do those kinds of things and improve in those areas.
Well, I think the most important thing I've learned recently, really more than before, even with my broadcasters, is just the fact that we really have to use the camera better to connect.
Mhm.
And most people want to look at their monitor. Like my
Right.
monitor is down here, but you have to look right into your lens. And if you look into
Yes.
your lens and you're talking to somebody and you place them right there in the lens, the research tells us, I found new research that tells us you can achieve the same kind of connection with people on a camera that you do in real
Wow.
face-to-face, connection.
Yeah.
It is a biological chemical thing that happens when you connect with people. But if you can teach people how to look into the lens and see someone and focus your eyes there, most of the time, you're going to make that connection with people. What I do is I teach them 80% right into the lens and 20% to the monitor. So
Hmm.
you're still doing both. When you talk to somebody, you don't just stare at them
Right.
the whole
Right.
time. So that little tip really helps people to learn the value of eye connection. And the fact is, on a cell phone or a computer, you can hardly find out where that lens is. So the first thing you have to do is go to your computer and figure out, where is my lens?
Yeah. Can we help people? I've talked to people even in the last month or so who say, I saw your live. I don't know how you do that. I can't do it. I can't get on the camera and just start talking. What have you identified as maybe two of the triggers or the fears that people have about literally just pressing record or live or whatever it is on their device?
Well, it's called the fight or flight response
Hmm.
in a nutshell, and it's just something that's embedded in our DNA to be fearful of something that we're not sure about. And being on camera, being live, the fear of making a mistake or just the
Yeah.
fear of performance is within everybody. So the first thing is to accept the fact that it is there when you're starting out. and then to learn what is the opposite of the fight or flight response. And nobody really talks about that. You've heard of fight or flight response, but what is the opposite? It is the relaxation response. And it's teaching yourself how to breathe and how to relax so that oxygen goes to your brain and you can think and speak conversationally. What happens when people don't practice the relaxation response is that they start going too fast, too loud, and then nothing is memorable because they're just racing to get done and get finished, and they can't really think about what they're saying. So to relax and really get into that state of the ability to focus is such a powerful thing, because that's when you get in the zone and you can really be yourself. It's the same thing that athletes do, before a game. It's how do they relax yet to be at their very best when game time comes. Very same kind of concept, visualization and all those things, but mostly it's about breathing and just relaxing. And that allows your body language to be normal, because as you know, in television communication, it's not just what you're saying, it's what messages you're giving off to the camera. And that's about how comfortable and relaxed you are, talking to somebody through this medium.
Yeah, one of the things you said earlier was about talking to, connecting through the lens. When I started in television very early, one of the things that would happen is I would be very relaxed in my preparation. And then when the reality that 3 million people were going to be watching me, when that reality hit me, all of a sudden I was like, oh my God. And my producer would be like, you in rehearsal, you were just, and what happened? I was like, well, I'm on ESPN now. So, I mean, that was rehearsal. So what are some of the techniques that communicators, CEOs, because I know those are folks you work with, CEOs, athletes, executives, what kind of techniques can you share to help people like me when I started 30 years ago relax? What thoughts, what are the visuals? What can I do?
The first thing I do is I give people a set of breathing exercises that they can practice if they get nervous. Just how to relax and how to learn how to breathe from your diaphragm and allow your voice to drop into this place where you sound better. When I was a young broadcaster, I still remember when I was here in Dallas working at Channel 8, and I didn't like the way that I sounded doing my voiceovers, and I would do them over and over again and couldn't get them right. I didn't have the luxury of a coach in those days. I had to learn just by really practicing on how to relax and get to your lower tone. So if you can feel your diaphragm when you're speaking, that vibration there is telling you your voice is getting into your lower register, and that's where you sound the most powerful. And then if you tell people to slow down, then they can breathe and speak naturally. Okay, so voice and breathing is really important, but then there's also the whole portion about how to speak correctly in terms of leading with the most important thing you have to say. So you switch from all the performance things you coach them to content. And the number one content thing I coach people on is don't lead up to your point, lead with your headline. Those of us in broadcasting and parents learn how to do it. I told you don't cross the street without looking both ways. It's the same thing when you're trying to help somebody be better on camera. Stop leading up to your point and making the proof before you've stated what your main point is. And I think that is one of the most powerful recommendations you can have on TV, because better than anyone does that if you don't lead with your headline, someone's going to interrupt you and you're never going to get to your point.
Yeah. One of the things that you and I worked on was authenticity, right? Knowledge is great. I have a lot of basketball knowledge. Personality is great, but who are you on camera? Who are you on stage? Let's talk a little bit about how do you find that? Because as you know, from working with broadcasters and executives and athletes, sometimes people try to emulate people, and it doesn't work, because that's really not who you are. That's really not who you are. So how do you help people who are interested in these fields to find that unique voice?
I believe that it comes by really breaking down a person in terms of their fears and understanding what drives them, what motivates them, and helping them find the best version of themselves. The problem I believe that most people have with coaching is that we're trying to make you a broadcaster or trying to make you sound like somebody else, when actually it's just the opposite. We're trying to make you the best version of what you can be. And I always say, when I see someone in the office and they're working in their environment, talking to people, and then I watch them on the air, if those aren't the same people, then I know that they're not being authentic. When I see you, Fran, and I coached you, you're the same person in the meeting room. You have the same energy, the same, excitement about basketball we worked with in those days, and the same love to share that information with everybody else as you do when you're on the air. And that's what I want to see, is someone who's true to themselves. Authenticity just means being real and telling it like it is. And I think it's true in people on camera, whether you're a politician or whether you're just a professor and teaching in a classroom, or whether you are a coach working with your players. You have to be authentic. And that means learning all the things about performance so that you can just be yourself.
Here's a little secret, everybody watching me and Tony right now. And it works into one of the biggest questions I get, which is usually, well, did you prepare for that interview? Did you have the questions before that? Tony, one of the biggest things that people tell me is how do you do impromptu, just conversations? And here's the secret, guys. I didn't tell Tony what I was going to ask him. And here's the other secret. I changed what I was going to ask him 3 or 4 days ago. I've mixed it up or whatever, because I wanted us to have a real exchange, not one where Tony expects me to ask this question and then I ask this question. I wanted this in a real environment. How do you teach? I know it sounds weird. How do you teach someone to be able to just have a conversation on camera? Oh, I can't hear you.
Technical problems happen all the time. Here's one of the great things to coach people on, is how to handle technical problems.
Yes.
And the idea there is the show's always got to go on. So you need to troubleshoot. I have 2 microphones on my computer. For some reason, one just went out there. I'll have to figure out why, but I have a second microphone so I can make sure that, there's always a backstop for you.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, mistakes are okay. You know why? Because people like to see how you handle the mistakes. That goes whether you're doing a show or you're just having a conversation like this. Okay, how are they going to handle the mistake? Are they going to get all freaked out, or are they just going to fix the problem? So, yeah, learning the technical is a big thing. But you were asking me about the idea of
having a conversation.
Always
having to have the questions beforehand. How do you just have a conversation on air?
I think the most important thing is, there's 2. One for the interviewer, meaning you, and that is to actually ask questions. A lot of people make statements, but they don't ask questions. So asking real questions is the most important thing for the interviewer, and then just listening. Because if you're listening, you're going to be able to find the follow-up. One of the mistakes people make in interviews is having a list of things they want to get to, and then looking at their list the whole time the person's answering the question. When you're looking down, you're not making that eye contact or connection with the person you're speaking with, and you're not really listening. You're thinking about what you're going to say next. But if you really focus and just listen, the follow-up is where the magic happens. And the follow-ups, the best ones, are usually something like, really? Tell me, what do you mean by that? Or, wow. And then you get a deeper answer, and it's so much fun to be in that kind of conversation, because I believe that the deeper you go into one question, the more interesting that conversation becomes than just having to go to a new topic several times. Because what happens then is you're basically kind of starting the interview over, where an ongoing conversation into a theme is really interesting. Because at the end of the day, I think what the interviewer wants, or what the viewer wants, is to feel like they really know that person or know something about them that they didn't know before. And that means you went into a place where they were actually, they like right now, I actually have to think about what is the magic of interviews and what makes them special. And it is those interviewers who really guide the person to that special place where they're truly revealing something about themselves.
You mentioned a lost art, and that was listening. So there are people who, while you're talking, and then they're, and then and you're just like, whoa, hold on. You asked me a question, so I'm answering, and even though I don't need to talk for 10 minutes, at least when I'm on the other side of an interview, I want to feel that the person who just asked that question actually cares about the answer and the process of that. How do you teach people to become better listeners?
Well, I think it's about having great mentors and learning from really great people. Mm-hmm. I had the pleasure here in Dallas, my first, mentor, my first boss here, if you could call him that. He didn't say he was my boss, but he was Vern Lundquist, who was the sportscaster at Channel 8 when I started back in prehistoric times. back in 1983 at Channel 8. And it was myself and Dale Hansen. People who might know Dale Hansen started here at the same time. Dale is still at the station 37, 38 years later. And Vern was our sports director at that time. And Vern used to tell me, listen, when you do interviews, you have to make the guest the star. So keep your questions tight, keep them brief, listen and follow up. And after you're done, go back and listen to that interview and see how much you were talking versus how much you were actually letting the person provide answers. And if your balance there is where the person got the majority of the time that you were interviewing, you know you did a great job. Because when you're learning, he said, when you're speaking, when you're speaking, you're not learning. It's when you are listening that you are learning something. And that was a great a recommendation I learned when I was 24 years old that I still think is a great lesson. We have to be learning. That's the whole purpose of doing interviews, is to learn something. Even as interviewers, we don't always know all the answers before we ask them, even though sometimes people say they do. And so I think it's really important to be an active listener. And that means if you're not sure about what the answer was, follow up as much as possible till you get the answer that you think is most authentic.
You brought up two of my favorite journalists and favorite folks of all time in sports. And I have a quick Dale Hansen story. A couple of years ago, I was getting inducted into the Dallas Independent School District Athletic Hall of Fame, and Dale was the MC. And so Dale you need to Google Dale and YouTube Dale, because he is legendary in his ability to just talk about anything, just to be candid, and he's a very good speaker, but he's great at connecting with your heart. So Dale introduces me for my award, Tony, and he mistakenly says that I played on a national championship team at the University of Texas in 1886. And so,
that sounds like Dale. He's getting the centuries wrong now. Now you know we're in trouble.
So when I go and receive my award and accept my award, he's standing to my right. And I go, Dale Hansen, as always, you're amazing. I go, and I have to say, I look pretty good for like a 200-year-old woman, don't you think? And then everybody laughs. And then, of course, Dale is going to get me back. So he gets to the mic. When he gets up there, he makes, calls me a wise ass or whatever. But it was amazing. And the reason I bring that up is because here is a guy, you mentioned Vern Lundquist and you mentioned Dale Hansen, who are true professionals. And yet the span of their talent, roasting people, sports, politics, culture, how important is it to be able to have that level of utility, if you will, in your talent to be able to do several things?
Well, I don't know if it's important, but I know how fortunate you have to be to have people around you who have that kind of, talent and skill. I use Dale as an example all the time in terms of just how to command presence in a room. Yeah. And everybody who's ever worked with Vern Lundquist knows the gentleman that he is. He just had a birthday recently in Steamboat, and of course I sent him birthday wishes. He's not doing as much anymore now that he's mostly retired. But Vern will always be such a special guy to Texans. He started his career in Austin and did Bowling for Dollars here in Dallas for many years before he was, the sportscaster at Channel 8. And I have a great Dale Hansen story myself. When I worked at Channel 8, Dale and I did not get along that well. There was always this little thing, and Dale he wasn't the boss, but he was the sports director. And so when I left Channel 8 for the last time in 2003 and started my own company, it was probably one of the most important things I've ever done, is start my own company. So I wasn't like totally disappointed about it, but of course no one likes to leave Channel 8. It was a great station.
Right.
And so Dale asked me to write and produce the story for him when he was inducted into the Broadcasters Hall of Fame in Washington, D.C. a couple of years ago, in front of a full gala of people at a banquet in Washington, D.C. They played this piece that I had written and produced, and there was a standing ovation when Dale got up to speak at the end and accept this Lifetime Achievement Award for freedom of speech, First Amendment reporting, and everybody was cheering him, and he said, "Did you not love that piece that we just showed? That was one of the guys who used to work with me at Channel 8, Tony Martinez, and he's great. I also had to fire him twice," and the place just broke up laughing. Dale's going to do that, right? Yes. He had to do that. He called me to apologize the next day, but when he has a line ready like that, he just cannot resist. And I had to admit, it was pretty funny. but that's just pure Dale Hansen.
Which leads us to the last part, the final frontier of our time together. I hate it has to end, but it's storytelling. Tony, that's one of the things we worked on in my sportscasting career. It's one of the things we actually just talked about with Dale Hansen, with Vern Lundquist, who could really weave a story in the sportscast. How do you develop the skill of storytelling?
That's a great question. I think storytelling is something that's innate in a lot of us, the ability to come to remember a great moment and then reveal it in a way that people find it as a relevant lesson for something that they're working on. To tell you my story about how I wanted to come to Dallas is maybe the thing you're going to remember from this conversation, or this story about Dale Hansen. The reason that storytelling is so important is because people, as Maya Angelou told us, or informed us, people remember what they feel about you so much longer than they remember, the facts about you or what they know about you. So when you tell a story, you create personality, you create feelings, and that's why it's so important, because people will remember that for a long time. They won't remember maybe any other things we talked about, but they're going to remember one of these stories we told. So for anybody who's in front of the camera, for anybody who wants to present, be able and be willing to reveal yourself and tell a story, because the best stories are going to be stories about something you remember or something about yourself that you think is, significant to the conversation. It's just so important. I love storytelling, but mostly I like listening to other people's stories. And that's why, I was a broadcaster first, and that is because I love doing the interviews, not necessarily being the one, being interviewed.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about our television careers and working with talent and those kinds of things. And I know that's how our connection started. That's how I met you. But you're getting to do some really fun stuff now. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're doing now and how you're helping people?
Well, I think that it's really, even since the last time we spoke briefly, I think it's changed a lot. What I found out recently is that you can help people to provide these performance things we've talked about. But right now, what people really need is to learn how to set up their home cameras, because everybody is working this way from their home. It's like a revolution. And this includes which camera to use for your home theater or home office, how to use your audio, where to look, how to make sure you have the correct bandwidth on your internet. All these things are extremely important. The backgrounds are like an entire lesson plan in themselves, because a lot of people want to put their pictures up and their family photos and all of those things. And I say, it's okay to do that. It's nice when people can kind of learn a little bit about you. But I believe the most important thing is keeping it as neutral as possible, so people can just focus on the speaker and what you're saying. And so I've gone through several versions of my home office just in the last few months. A couple of weeks ago, I got this background back here that I can change out. And that it's not one of those chroma key backgrounds. It's a real fabric background behind me. And I think this helps people to be able to move and have good body language and not just be tied to their chair. I can either sit or stand. I have my microphone right here in front of me, so it's not necessarily on me, but yet still close enough. So as you saw, I can switch it if one of them, goes out. So I like the idea of helping people, number one, set up their technical environment. And let's face it, some people understand how to do this easily, and other people need a lot more hands-on help. But if your technical isn't right, then how are you going to perform, right? And so it's technical first, then it's what you're saying, your message, and then third is your performance coaching. So what I'm doing now is helping people in those three phases. And certainly anybody who wants to contact me, I'd love to help them, because right now everybody's looking for that edge of how do I communicate, online. And
how do people reach out to you? Where can they find you? I know you and I have been conversing on LinkedIn, but there are other ways to reach out to you as well.
Well, they can reach me at TonyMartinezCoaching.com. My company originally was called Silverhorn Media, which I do all my documentary and broadcast work there. But I have actually, that's what I've spent the last few months doing, is really transitioning to, helping people individually. And that's awful nice of you. If they want to reach me, they can just email me, Tony@TonyMartinezCoaching.com. And I will, help you out as much as I can to try to learn how to, I call it feed the monster here, learn how to use this technology so we can be great. So much of business now is transitioned to the home environment. When all of the COVID-19, situation is, I will not say resolved, but when it is, we're finally past the to 2020 into 2021, most companies are saying that they're still going to retain at least a split hybrid sort of home versus office environment. So people are still going to be working from home 2 to 3 days a week in many companies across the country. And certainly we've seen the advantage that has in saving cost and time for those of us at home. And so I expect that's going to continue for quite some time, and people will need help in making sure that you can hear them, see them, and that they can be comfortable in front of the camera.
Tony, always great to see you. You can reach Tony at TonyMartinezCoaching.com. And until next time, hey, have a good week, guy.
Thank you, Fran. Talk to you soon.
You got it.
Bye-bye.
You too.